connecting you with Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the world. This is TMJ4 News at 3:30.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our 3:30 special. Today, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Hello, Shannon.
Hey, good afternoon, Charles. The month-long celebration runs from September 15th through October 15th. And today, we will touch on the rich culture and history of the Hispanic community here in Milwaukee. We will also talk about how the Latinx community has been hit hard by the pandemic, and of course, the role the Hispanic vote plays in this upcoming election.
So we have a lot to talk about Milwaukee's dynamic Hispanic community and how it is made up of people from nearly every Spanish-speaking country around the globe.
Professor Joseph Rodriguez from UW Milwaukee's History Department joining us. Professor, thank you. Tell us why many Hispanics came to Milwaukee to plant roots.
Well, the first settlement began in the 1920s when there was a strike at the Pfister-Vogel tanning company. This was at the end of the 6th Street Viaduct, and Mexicans were brought as strikebreakers at that time, and they settled in the South Side. And they were joined by railroad workers, traquistas as they were called, on the South Side in the 1920s. And then in World War II era, Puerto Ricans began arriving with the war defense factories needing workers. They came from Puerto Rico, they came from New York and Chicago, and they were joined by so-called braceros who came to Wisconsin also during World War II. So the Mexican Puerto Rican community by the 1960s was basically evenly distributed. At that point, the two populations combined into a civil rights movement, fighting for better jobs, better housing, better education.
So, Professor,
yes.
Let's talk about those prominent figures in our community who have spearheaded the fight in civil rights, not only here but across the country. Who were they?
Well, we had people like Jesus Salas, who he was originally from South Texas, and there was a large South Texas migration every summer to harvest crops in Wisconsin. So Jesus Salas had been involved in farm workers movements in South Texas, and he came up and he started organizing farm workers in Wisconsin. Ernesto Chacon began organizing as well, and Roberto Hernandez. So that they were all sort of involved in the farm worker movement. They became involved in civil rights in Milwaukee, better housing, better education, better child care for the farm workers. And this was also attached to the South Texas movement. So there was a strong migration back and forth between South Texas and Wisconsin.
Yeah, we know there's a long history here, but we appreciate you giving us a brief look at that history. Professor Rodriguez, thank you very much. Mm-hmm. The Hispanic community is being impacted by the coronavirus pandemic at disproportional rates compared to their white counterparts. These numbers are from the Centers for Disease Control in the U.S. Cases in the Hispanic or Latino communities are almost 3 times higher than cases in white populations. And then hospitalizations are more than 4.5 times higher. Death rates are also slightly higher than among white people. So closer to home, we are seeing that same disproportionate effect. According to the census, the 15.6% of Milwaukee County's population is Hispanic or Latino. However, the rate of positive COVID-19 cases sits at nearly 30%. Now, this is compared to a population that is 64.2% white. The rate of positive cases, COVID cases that is, among the white population is at 33.7%. So now let's talk about this issue as it relates to Milwaukee County.
Dr. Jorge Romeo is from 16th Street Community Center joining us. And I'd like for you, Doctor, to give perspective on why you're seeing so large numbers of COVID-19, especially on the South Side within the Latino community.
Sure. Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. So I work at 16th Street Community Health Centers, and we are actually one of the busiest testing sites in the entire county. And we have done at least close to 13,000 tests so far since the beginning of the pandemic. And we have seen positivity rates that have been steadily between 20 and 30%. which compared to the state average has actually been way, way above. So we have been experiencing what the rest of the state is now finally seeing. And that just highlights the disparities that we have seen in our population.
Can you speak on the why? Can you speak on the why you're seeing those numbers? What is it that has these numbers rising in this community specifically?
Absolutely. We have a lot of essential workers, people that cannot work from home. They need to go to their jobs in the construction industries, service industries, restaurant industries, so they cannot stay at home. We have a lot of overcrowding and multi-generational homes in which we have a lot of people that live with their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles in a very small space. So the risk of somebody giving COVID to the rest of their family once they contract it is extremely high. And the opportunities for isolation after you contract COVID in a small space like that is very minimum.
Dr. Ramallo, can you tell us how you are connecting to those who need the help and how those who need the help can find you?
Absolutely. I will point everybody to our website, which is sschc.org. And that is the main clinic website. We have a lot of resources. We have also been doing Facebook Live events in which myself and some guests will talk about different specific topics about COVID. And most importantly, just take questions from the community and try to connect with them and see what types of questions and misconceptions they may have about what COVID is and how to best prevent it.
And these are all offered bilingual?
Absolutely. The Facebook Live sessions that we have are exclusively in Spanish, and the website is both in English and Spanish.
Dr. Jorge Ramallo, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us more perspective. As this pandemic continues, of course, you can find the latest coronavirus news and numbers from Southeast Wisconsin on our website, including resources for where to get tested at tmj4.com/coronavirus. So coming up, we are 25 days from the election, and one group of voters is feeling left out in the push to vote.
Plus, the problems local volunteers are facing in getting the word out to vote due to the pandemic and how they are overcoming those challenges.
Decision 2020 now. The number of eligible Latino voters has never been as high as it is now, but many say that they don't feel invited to participate in the election by the candidates.
Gabby Rodriguez takes a look at why the younger Latino population may be the key to increasing Latino voter turnout overall.
El Paso, Texas, oftentimes referred to as two countries with one heart. The city has been through a lot.
We have to educate our population on how important it is that our voices be heard.
On this day, it was the last day to register to vote in Texas. Latino voters have been referred to as the sleeping giant, and recent numbers from a Pew Research study support the idea. There are 5.6 million registered Latino voters in Texas, and millions others in states like California, Florida, New York, and Arizona. Volunteers at key locations in town like this food pantry are asking drivers of every car stopping by if they're registered to vote and answering questions. Dora Ramirez was picking up food at the pantry on this day. She wastes no time telling you how she feels as a Latina voter.
Devalued. I mean, we are, like you said, the largest minority vote in America. And yet, we are so marginalized.
One of Dora's major concerns heading into the election, health and the economy.
If you don't have a healthy population, how do you expect to have a healthy economy?
The feeling of exclusion is being felt across the country. In San Diego County, Juan Vargas says he's not as civically engaged.
Locally, I feel like I have a voice just because it's a little easier to get involved, but nationally there isn't that same attraction.
Former Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke is seeing a lot of the same as he and his team at Powered by People try to engage voters throughout the state of Texas. He holds hope in seeing a particular group stepping up.
And those young people, I really believe, are not only going to vote in record numbers, but they're getting their folks and their grandparents and the people in their lives to vote as well.
I know that I now have more of a voice than I did 2 years ago.
Miranda Escobar Gregory is a first-generation Mexican-American, challenging her parents' political views and educating her family and peers on the voting process.
If we have a strong presence in this country, why are we not using our voice to represent us and letting other people do it for us?
All my emails, vote, Register now. Yeah, they're tired of me.
A worthwhile risk, she says, if it will give her community the opportunity of being heard and awakening the sleeping giant. In El Paso, Gabby Rodriguez reporting.
And then do you know exactly?
All right, now let's talk about the election coming up in just 25 days.
We have Nancy Hernandez with the Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce and Eloise Gomez with the League of Women Voters. Thank you both for being here. Let's start with Nancy. Tell us about voter turnout in the Hispanic community.
Thanks, Charles and Shannon. So happy to be here with you. So despite our near south side being one of the densely populated areas of the state, we still historically have had low voter turnout there. And certainly these past elections in the spring with its challenges weren't much different. You've seen a steady increase in those areas, but certainly not one with the burgeoning Hispanic population. We have a very young population, so many people every year are able to vote. We definitely want to see those numbers higher. Hispanic Collaborative is hoping that we'll have 5,000 more Latino voters regionally here than we have in the past presidential election.
And Nancy, is that due to what you believe will be a lot of young voters going to the polls, or an overall generational viewpoint of people going to the polls in the Hispanic community?
Yeah, so definitely young voters is the focus to engage new voters. We think that new voters, if we engage them early, that we'll have voters for life, and that's certainly what we want to see, as your last segment pointed out, making sure that the Latino voice is at every table, and the voting table in America is one of the biggest, is really a goal to ensure that the policies that affect our lives, our quality of life, that we have say and input into those.
Eloisa, we have seen the pandemic impact everything and everyone in how they do things. What has been the challenge to reach out to voters to make sure they have the resources they need to vote?
Well, the pandemic has really thrown a curve into the whole process of grabbing the attention of our Latino community. One of the biggest things that is important to do the outreach to reach the Latino community is providing bilingual information, in particular in Spanish, to the community. We need to also figure out how to better market to the community. I don't think that in recent years, or really in the past, that we've been marketing appropriately to reach the community. For example, a lot of our community doesn't necessarily speak Spanish, but I think providing information in Spanish is a good thing for those that need it. And it's also kind of a code message that we care about the community. And so I'm really happy that the League of Women Voters has provided a lot of investment into translating materials to reach them. But, there's so much other needs that some of our community has. Mentioning the pandemic is just one area that is a focus in their lives right now. And I think we have that challenge to both support the needs that they have, as well as to remind them about what voting can do for our community overall.
Lisa, it appears what you're saying is that the League of Women Voters has been more inclusive in trying to get that message out to the community?
Really, it has. I mean, there aren't a lot of resources, nonpartisan resources, that is, to the community bilingually. And if you go onto the League's statewide website, you're going to find a plethora of information. In addition, vote411.org. One of the big messages I heard pre-pandemic from individuals that I was meeting on a daily basis was, where is the information in Spanish regarding the candidates? I just need nonpartisan information on them in Spanish. And the League now provides that nationally through vote411.org.
That's good to know. Eloisa Gomez and Nancy Hernandez, thank you very much for being here and helping our viewers understand all of this.
Thank you.
As always, you can find our latest election stories and voting resources on our website at tmj4.com/decision2020.
And still ahead, you can't talk about a community without talking about the arts and culture they bring.
And we're going to have a live musical performance from Latino Arts in Walker Square. Here's a live look right now. Welcome back. Let's look at some key facts about the nation's Hispanic population. Hispanic Heritage Month started as a week-long celebration in 1968, but Congress made it a month-long event. 20 years later, the Hispanic population is the fastest growing racial or ethnic group in the U.S., with people of Mexican origin making up more than half of the population. So let's dive into the rich culture that's located right here in Milwaukee.
Arts, he's joining us live. Jacobo, tell us, how is Latino Arts celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month?
Well, you know, we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month all year long, and right now we are going right into our Day of the Dead celebration, which is a wonderful way for the entire community to come together and celebrate. But not only that, we invite others to come get to know the Hispanic community through one of the most colorful and wonderful celebrations that the community has to offer for everybody in general.
So do show about the art gallery at Latino Arts.
Well, great. So I'm standing in front of one of our ofrendas for our annual Dia de los Muertos ofrenda exhibit. And this ofrenda is dedicated to the memory of Mr. Pedro Linares Lopez, who is the creator of Alebrijes. And you can see all these wonderful little figurines. There are kind of imaginary spirit animals. They were created by the amazing students of downtown Montessori, which is one of our partner schools who was participating in Dia de los Muertos this year. But we have many of other activities throughout the month of October and November to help celebrate Dia de los Muertos. We're particularly proud of November 2nd, the day of Dia de los Muertos. We're going to be having an amazing concert that people can join us virtually by the Villalobos brothers. And they can find more information about that concert and some of our other programming on our website, which is www.latinoartsinc.org, or they can connect with us on social media, which our handle is @Latino Arts Inc. on all social media like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Mr. Lobo, we appreciate you showing us. If we could get a wide shot of that beautiful demonstration behind you, that would be awesome. Again, people can, as he mentioned, join in and participate in everything that's happening at Latino Arts. Thank you. All right, let's turn now to music in Hispanic culture, particularly Latino music. Now, it did take a while to become very popular in the U.S. due to people being discriminated against for speaking Spanish. With emerging artists like Selena and Gloria Estefan, it became popular in the 1990s. Following her death, Selena became the first Latin artist to peak an album that contained mostly Spanish music at #1 on the Billboard's 200. And today, of course, we have artists like Marc Anthony, Enrique and Iglesias, Shakira, of course, Jennifer Lopez in the Latin music scene.
A local musician joins us now, guitarist Joan Ruiz will not only tell us about Latino music, but is going to show us how it's done as well.
Hello.
Yes, hi. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about why you enjoy playing the guitar and how you got started in this rich culture.
Well, I love to play. Well, I love the guitar because it sounds soft, beautiful, and it's an amazing instrument. You can do so many things on it. You can do melodies and accompaniment at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I used to play saxophone, and in Puerto Rico, we have a culture that we do parandas. Mm-hmm. And one day I saw a guy playing the guitar, and I was like, man, I really want to play the guitar. So I asked for a guitar in Christmas, and the story began there.
Well, we need to hear you.
That's good.
What's the name of your song you're about to play?
Perfect. So the name of the song that I'm going to play is by Latin American composer Hector Villalobos, and it's called Prelude Number 1. So yeah.
Let's listen.
Thank you.
That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Ruiz, for enjoying our ears to this beautiful music. We'll be right back. The fun doesn't end here. Despite the pandemic, there are still ways to celebrate beyond Hispanic Heritage Month. You can celebrate the Day of the Dead virtually with Mitchell Park Domes on October 30th. The link to the event is included with the purchase of a craft and activity kit. It includes a skull to decorate, maracas to paint, stickers, and marigold seeds, and so much more. Well, thank you for joining us today to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month here at TMJ4 News at 3:30.